Look, this is just my unpopular opinion, but I think limited preferential voting is entrenching power in Papua New Guinea. I'm an admirer of Professor John Nash's game theory, popularized by Russell Crowe in his movie The Beautiful Mind, where this guy created a sort of a mathematical theory that has a wide range of applications in economics, political theory, biology, mathematics, and so forth. And so I suppose I want to apply a particular aspect of game theory to PNG politics, particularly on limited preferential voting or LPV. If we apply that, we can see specific trends that seem to explain what is happening right now in PNG politics, what we're gonna see in the future, and what's there to come. So in game theory, players always adopt the strategies to maximize the payoffs. Would be the most maximum outcome according to certain rules. PNG changed the rules in terms of voting from the first past the vote or FPV to limited preferential voting or LPV. The rules did change, but the players in the game remain the same. So in the FPV system, the strong candidate wins. In the new LPV system, the strong candidate often becomes the common enemy. Therefore, it always incentivizes cooperation among the weaker candidates to form a collective or a cartel in which particularly the second vote is traded amongst themselves at the exclusion of the strong candidate. So let's use an example. In Maprik Open, John Simon was the stronger candidate who led for a considerable periods of the counting. But when it came to the second and third votes, it all went to the challenger Gabriel Capris, who eventually won. So it is mathematically sound to be always the second best candidate among your electorate, rather than maintaining a stronghold and being a stronghold being a strong candidate in that stronghold, because mathematically you will always lose. The other thing that I'd like to discuss is that LPV monetizes the votes. Um, let's be honest, voters sell them or put a price on them. So in economics, the more input to produce a good, the higher the price of the good will be. So previously in FPV, one vote, one cash, all that. But in the LPV system now, each individual has three votes. So consequently, the cost of a vote goes up for a candidate because there's no longer any one vote, there's three votes the candidate must buy. So let's go through it. Vote 1 is locked for a particular candidate. Votes 2 and 3 are traded and sold. That's practically common. It is now three times as expensive to contest an election as it was before introduction of the LPV, because you multiply the multiplier by 3. The added cost arises when candidates simply employ the spoiler effect, where it's a strategy of paying a nobody to run in a competitor's stronghold to divert all the second votes to the candidate and split the contender's base votes. Although it favors the incumbent candidate, it is also an added cost which, if the incumbent is a government MP having access to all the DSIP slash funds and all that, then no problem. But for other candidates, elections as a by result become prohibitively very expensive. As we all know in LPV, the preference flows until 50 plus 1% is reached. The net effect is that there is a slim margin of victory, making that system very sensitive to fraud and error. Now, case in point, when we see in the Rabaul Open when Dr. Malin Arab went against the challenger Graham Rummet, where after distribution the only difference was 3 votes. Eventually, it was challenged in court, where 15 votes were disputed and they accepted it for Alan Marat and he won. But that highlights the very nature of LPV system, where the margin of victory is very slim, and you can just destroy one box, bribe one official, do one just single thing, and the consequences of it is very high and very destructive. So it becomes a high-stake political game. It becomes volatile. So it incentivizes the destroying of a single box, or closing of a voting station, because, as I've said, one such act has a great or significant consequential effect. We can see it very commonly in the Highlands, and so the outcome is that an honest candidate will never win, as accumulated preferences spread over a wide electorate will overwhelm any ideological platform. And if you can just be a nuisance and destroy ballot boxes here and there, then whoever is leading gets declared. And I'm explaining it as there being a science behind all of this. Now, It really shows, because before or prior to the 2022 general elections, and ever since independence coming up to 2022, PNG traditionally had a high turnover rates of candidates. In every election since independence, 50 to 60% of candidates lose their seats. This trend was only broken in 2022 when 64% of incumbents returned to power. DSIP and the withholding of those DSIP from opposition candidates favors the incumbents, enabling them to build a financial capital to compete for the election. A challenger simply does not have the capital to compete against an incumbent. As I've said previously, it's becoming expensive. An incumbent, as a member of the ruling party, has an added advantage because they have extensive administrative control over logistics and personnel in the elections in the electorate. Because let's be honest, as a member of the ruling party or the government's administrative apparatus, is not run by public servants, it's run by those MPs. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a complete administrative capture of the government system, from the security personnel to the counting official to the returning officer. So it pays to be the incumbent, it pays for you to be in power, and it pays for you to be, you will have a very high chance of winning, mathematically of course. So the convergence of the LPV system and the incumbency trap has transformed PNG politics from a democratic process into a volatile, high-stakes economic scheme. The Prime Minister recently allocated himself 500 million kina in the 2026 budget. It's not an anomaly. It is a calculated move to build the ultimate war chest needed to survive the inflation of political costs. Consequently, the 27 elections will likely be the most expensive and violent in history. The stakes are very, very high. The greatest danger, however, lies beyond the count. By monetizing and mobilizing disenfranchised youth to act as political enforcers, the political class is creating a monster. And we can see what happened in Million Bay directly tied back to the creation of these young thugs as enforcers. Because once the election dries up, these weaponized groups are likely to evolve into a permanent self-funding criminal element, perpetuating lawlessness long after the declarations are signed. So coming back to game theory, what we're seeing in Papua New Guinea politics is a textbook case of what we call in game theory the prisoner's dilemma, but played out on the national stage. Everyone involved is making what seems like the only logical choice for themselves. Voters sell their votes because they get nothing from the government. Candidates have to bribe voters because running a policy is a losing game. And it is financial planning for a prime minister to stash a massive 500 million of funds just to stay in power. And it's a financial incentive for MPs to remain in government, because the current voting system has made politics a financially brutal business. The only problem is, while these choices make sense for each person individually, they add up to a disaster for the country as a whole. It's a downward spiral of slow growth and rampant corruption, and it's only going to get worse. And nobody can risk within the system to be the one to break that cycle. The real tragedy here isn't that the people involved are inherently corrupt, it's that the system itself, with its flawed voting, constant political maneuvering, and the high cost of staying in office, is pushing them to tear down the very country they're supposed to be leading. If things don't change, like really, really change, then the 2027 election is just going to be another, even uglier round in a game that's rigged from the start. God bless PNG.